Fairy, your friendly neighborhood storybook fairy, and I would like to welcome you to fall. Happy fall! Today we are going to be reading a fall story about a witch named Hazel. Just kidding. It's called Witch Hazel, which is the name of a plant. Maybe there's some growing near you right now. Wouldn't that be an exciting discovery? But I don't think this one is only about a plant called Witch Hazel. Shall we find out? Okay, let's go. Witch Hazel by Alice Schertle, illustrated by Margot Tomes. Bill, Bart, and Johnny were brothers, and Johnny was the youngest. They lived in a little cabin in a little clearing in the middle of a wild wood. While Bill and Bart worked the clearing with pick and plow and a two-man saw, Johnny ran wild in the wild wood. He listened to the wind whisper its strange secrets in the branches of the hemlock trees and knew the wood for a place where anything might happen. When spring came, Bill and Bart plowed a patch for corn, one pulling and one pushing. Johnny wanted to help. "You're too little," said Bill. "You're too young," said Bart. They were fond of Johnny, so they gave him a handful of pumpkin seeds. I like to snack on pumpkin seeds. How about you? Johnny dug a hole and dropped the seeds in one by one. The older boys forgot about Johnny's seeds, but Johnny didn't forget. Every day he poured a cupful of water over the dirt, and down in the ground, dark and moist and silent, life stirred in the slumbering seeds. When a narrow vine fingered its pale way into the sunshine, Johnny wanted to make a scarecrow. "To save my pumpkins from the birds," he said. "You're too little to make a scarecrow," said Bill. "You're too young," said Bart. But they were fond of Johnny, so they cut a big branch from a witch hazel bush and stuck it deep into the ground. "Put a pair of overalls on it," said Bill. "It'll do for a scarecrow," Bart agreed. Johnny got a burlap sack from the barn. In a corner of the loft, inside a dusty trunk, he found a gingham dress and an old bonnet. "Hazel will keep the birds away from my pumpkins," said Johnny. "Do you think she'll do a good job of it? Let's find out." The vine grew, twining and twisting its way around the scarecrow. When big creamy blossoms opened up on it, the birds helped themselves. There was only one pumpkin, and it was hidden by a fold of faded gingham. Maybe that's why the birds missed it. "Only one pumpkin," said Bill. "That scarecrow couldn't scare a butterfly." "You should have used overalls," Bart agreed, but Johnny said, "Hazel saved the best one." During the long, hot days, the brothers' cornstalks reached toward the summer sun. The one pumpkin grew from the size of a teacup to the size of a teapot. Autumn came, the corn ripened sweet as sugar, and one pumpkin turned from greenish gold to orange. Bill and Bart piled a cart high with corn and made ready to take it to the harvest fair. Johnny wanted to go too. Can you guess what the brothers said? "You're too little," said Bill. "We won't be home till morning." "You're too young," said Bart. "Maybe next year." But they were fond of Johnny, so they offered to sell his pumpkin at the fair. "Though it's only a one-pie pumpkin," Bill told him. "Someone might pay a penny for it," said Bart. Johnny shook his head. "Hazel saved the best one," he said. "It is not for sale." After the brothers had set off, one pulling and one pushing, Johnny picked the last yellow flowers off the witch hazel bush. He stuck some in the rim of Hazel's bonnet and wound some through her buttonholes. The rest he wove into a chain of yellow blooms and slipped it over her burlap head. Isn't that beautiful? He turned an apple crate on end and placed the one pumpkin on it in a nest of hazel leaves. Johnny sat in the soft dust of the garden. He listened to the wind whisper through the dry corn stalks and watched a beetle run up a gingham sash. When the first stars blinked open in the darkening sky and the wind grew cold, he went into the cabin, ate his dinner, and went to bed. He woke in the dark. Outside, the wind whistled and moaned, and the branches of a hemlock tree rubbed against the cabin roof. Scratch, 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 scratch. Johnny padded across the wooden floor and stood listening. The wind sang down the stone chimney. Would you be frightened? Do you think Johnny is frightened? He pulled open the heavy oak door and stepped outside. Stars glittered in the moonless skies as if the night itself had a million eyes. Sang the wind, and the black shapes of hemlocks bent and bowed like shadowy dancers. Johnny picked his way barefoot across the dark clearing and into the garden. She stood in her gingham dress, rocking back and forth to the music of the wind. Held in her bent brown arms, the one pumpkin glowed softly. As Johnny watched, hidden among the cornstalks, Hazel tossed the orange globe into the air. It arced slowly upward through the black sky and hung like a lantern among the stars. Sang the wind. And Hazel held out her crooked arms. Dipping, swaying, bowing, turning, she danced beneath the pumpkin moon. Johnny watched until his eyes grew heavy and his head sank down upon his knees. While the orange moon turned slowly among the stars, he felt himself lifted and carried and laid at last in his own bed. Something rough, like burlap, brushed his cheek, and he smelled the spicy odor of witch hazel blossoms. When he opened his eyes, bright sunlight was streaming through the window. During the night, a windstorm had littered the clearing with small branches torn from the trees. In the garden, Johnny found pieces of broken pumpkin shell and a pile of yellow pulp next to the overturned apple crate. Hazel was gone. Johnny picked a handful of seeds out of the stringy pumpkin pulp. He dropped the seeds one by one into a hole and covered them with dirt. The older boys were surprised to find Johnny already working in the garden. "Johnny's growing up," said Bill. "He'll be old enough to go to the fair next year," Bart agreed, "but there'll never be another harvest fair like this one. You should have seen it, Johnny. The biggest harvest moon you ever saw rose right over the fair." "Biggest orange moon you ever saw," said Bill. "There'll never be another harvest moon like that one." "Never," said Bart. He patted Johnny on the shoulder. "Never," said Bill. He picked a yellow flower out of Johnny's hair. Johnny only smiled. He was fond of his brothers and didn't like to tell them they were wrong. A sudden gust of wind shivered the branches of the witch hazel bush, and under the ground the pumpkin seeds waited for spring. The end. I hope that you enjoyed today's story as much as I did, and I hope that you dance beautiful dances under the harvest moon this fall amid the rustling leaves. And I hope you enjoy some pumpkin pie as well. And I'll see you another day for another story. Goodbye, friends.